Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share, which, we missed last week.
Yeah, I don't know where we were Monday.
I think we were a bit, I don't remember. I don't remember. We were in Mount Shasta. We were in another dimensional state of being.
Right.
Good morning, Laurel. And so we had intended on talking, but actually, that we felt like we did so much work with the group that we're with that, since we talk about collective energy shows, everybody got it anyway. So it didn't matter whether we did
Right.
this or not.
Whether you're aware of it or not.
So a lot came up with us while we were there.
As usual.
As always, yes. And so still on processing mode since, well, even though the group retreat was over on Tuesday, we stayed with a couple others until Thursday to process in the redwoods, which was fabulous as always too, and by the ocean as well. So I'm still in processing mode.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Still figuring out which end is up, if there is any up anymore. It just is all whole. So what we came up with as a group last week, something that's really important, I think, for everyone to talk about, is what we discovered was happening and manifesting. And it seems to be manifesting a lot in many different ways right now is, we keep on getting pushed to, oh God, see, I already got it. I was seeing, I was telling you how wide awake I was right before we got on. So that's not what it is. How we were talking about and manifesting stuff about how what's the line that we draw for ourselves, right?
Right.
This is a fabulous topic
Yep.
because it really is a key component to us moving forward beyond, right? Because if we stop at our lines, then we never like, it's that whole, like what you said, it's the whole like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, yet we want to stay at a certain line.
Well,
So
and it's that level of havingness that we're going to allow ourselves.
right.
So it's that havingness level or limit, I like to say, I've decided this is enough. I've decided this is good enough, or this is bad enough, or this is strong enough or powerful enough, and I'm satisfied with this level.
Right. Morning, Gloria. Yes. And and it's such an underlying core limitation that we have, right?
Right. Whether it's as a human, I can only go this far,
Right.
which that's the human havingness level that we have created.
As we created the embodiments of human, right? So it's like, so this is what the limitations are, because that's the exclusionary part of density that we wanted to explore, right? So yeah, so we talked about, oh God, there's so many levels of this. How do we even go through the entire week? It's like, so first of all, we have these beliefs that I'm only human, right?
Right, right.
And even if we remember and we go into all this spiritual consciousness and remembrance, we still hold in ourselves these beliefs of these laws that we've created that say I have to abide by these,
Right.
right? I have to limit myself. I have to be limited due to this separation duality. I have to only be able to function this way,
I have to age.
right? I have to eat.
Right. I have to eat. I have to poop. I have to drink water.
Mhm.
I have to consume and excrete.
I have
I
to
have to
sleep.
have and shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to stay warm or stay cool.
Right.
Yeah, all those basic needs that food, clothing, shelter.
That we believe are required as a human, right?
Right. Basic
And
needs.
We build that into our cells, right? So of
Right.
course, because our cells have a collective consciousness, which, then we manage at this level, that's what they are, as a majority believe. So when we achieve those for ourselves, we say, okay, that's enough. I've achieved what my human condition has desired
Right.
or thinks it requires, believes it requires. Well, okay, so then you take that, away and you go into things like, okay, and then we can go from that to the really esoteric to, well, I can only what? See things, I can only hear things, I can only, you know, if I can only, this is what people say to me often when I work with them. If I can only be content.
Right. Right.
I'm tired of what's the motivation? What's the enough of them striving to change the comfort zone? Like what's is that they make themselves so uncomfortable that they have to do something about it. So then they'll come and talk about, and it's not just me, it's like anybody who does this kind of work, or a psychologist, or they'll go to a gym because they feel so uncomfortable with their bodies, or they'll go and do it because that's their motivation, like you were saying, to like change. Like, well, how much is enough to change?
Right.
That we have to motivate ourselves to change. But the biggest thing are these lines that we draw for ourselves. So we talk about that, but the biggest lines are the ones that we draw for ourselves that limit us to say, when I achieve this, that's enough.
Right. Right.
And now we're pushing ourselves collectively to go beyond those lines that we've already stretched a lot of boundaries from where we had been before, especially in the consciousness community. And in terms of how we live, and then how we listen to guidance, and over everything else, and or over certain things. And then we say, well, what's my line, right? And when I say what's my line, it's like, well, we had things about what's my line of, well, my mind says, well, this is logical and all these other people say this, so I must believe it. And who am I to cross that line? Who am I to
Right.
say it doesn't work for this works differently for me,
Right.
right? And then,
Or who am I to believe that I'm worthy of more?
right, of more consciousness, of more abilities, of more remembrance, of transcending all the limitations imposed here in the 3D, right?
And who am I to change the rules so I can have more?
Right. And so one of the things that we faced, multiple individuals in our group, were, why inflict physical punishment? We inflict physical punishment on ourselves because we believe once we cross a line that we have to be punished to do that.
Or reminded that you've crossed the line, get back.
Right. Or, right. Good morning, Nicole. So it's like, how many times, right? And that was what we talked about, because we had physical stuff that came up with people while we were
Imagine
there.
that.
Right. Physical, we had anxiety, we had all kinds of stuff, which, we're very accustomed to in having
Right.
these retreats.
Right.
But it was, I mean, not pleasant, but it was almost comical, right? In terms of how apparent it was, right?
Right.
And, as much as it was not funny, it was funny because we're like, okay, look at how like blatant we're making this, right?
And being in that place of observation that we were, that's why we could make it comical. That's why
Right.
we could observe it as comical, because we were in the observation mode.
Right. And there was no judgment. That was the funny part, is, okay, everyone there was conscious enough to accept that observation, to even those who had the pain and physical stuff that they were punishing themselves with.
Right. Which brought up a lot of anger as
Right.
well. Is
Right. But
once you get in that place of observation to see, oh, I'm just manipulating myself. And then the anger sets in about, why am I manipulating myself?
right.
Why am I limiting myself?
Right. And then, so then that sort of exacerbates the situation, right? Because then this anger comes up on top of the pain punishment. And then it's like, okay,
But I do see that as a fallout of observation, which I think is the step in the right direction, to
Hmm.
be an observance of it and say, okay, I see what I'm doing to myself.
Right.
So now, how do I even step further into observation?
And not judge myself for what I'm doing to myself. Right.
Right. Which that's where the anger stems from.
Right. And so we saw all that. And part of it is because we have gotten to a certain point collectively. Many of us have been on a conscious path, on a regularly conscious path of observation and self expansion and everything else. But then inevitably, it's individual for every single one of us. Where is the line where we believe that's as far as I can go?
Right. And we believe that's all we deserve.
Right.
And
I'm
we
going to cross that
believe,
line. Oh, I'm going to get punished for it.
right,
Or if we agree to transcend the rules or the laws or whatever, then we believe that we will have to, that's where the suffrage thing came from. Remember, we were like, oh, well, look, that's what we created with suffrage of, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. And to do this, I recognize I'm breaking laws, which means I'm supposed to be punished because I'm breaking the rules that the collective has agreed upon. And so like many of us are saying, yeah, we're done with these like limiting exclusionary rules that served us totally in the exploration of the separation and density that we've had. And now it's time for us to shift it because we're done and sort of this whole thing is complete. So to move beyond this completion into what's new and what's next, then we basically are throwing out the old rule book,
right.
right?
Well,
And
and then
it,
you've also got the ego sitting there saying, okay, the rules say that you can go this far, and the rules agree that you're worthy enough to go this far. So if you break the rules, rewrite the rules, whatever, or just lose the rules, and you go further, the ego sits there and says, but what if you're not worthy? And then the universe takes it from you. Or it's just not meant to be because you're not worthy enough. It makes you not want to try.
Nicole says, lol, rules become more general guidelines and they fall away completely. And then they fall. Yeah, they do. The thing is, if we let them fall away, right? Because that's
Or
the
we
punishment.
don't replace them with some that are just a little bit different to fool the ego.
Right, right, right. Like we had blisters, right? There were some that had blisters,
Cuts.
cuts.
And then we turned it financial.
Well,
At
oh,
least I
yeah,
did.
that's right.
And I had to be limited financially.
Yeah, because you had your stuff taken away since somebody sort of
Right.
stole your
I had to
card
freeze
number.
everything.
Yeah, so everything had to
So I
get
couldn't spend what money I had.
yeah. So there's that. Then there was the back pain, neck pain, and oh wait, the parking ticket thing of the getting blocked in that somebody
Locked
had.
in.
Oh
Right.
my gosh, that was so great. Like, so we had a lot of all that kind of stuff of like, oh, look, nope, you're gonna get punished for this. Nope, you're like, and it's us allowing that to be created because we believe we deserve that when we go in. Like, and here's the thing, and the question is, where is your line? Where is the
Right.
line? Because many times we say, oh, I'm okay breaking this rule and I'm okay breaking this rule and I'm okay breaking this and I'm okay extending beyond this, but this is my line. I'm not allowed to go past that or else I will get punished.
Right.
And
Uh,
we're not even conscious of that.
right. And even things like I'm exhausted, but I have to get this done. Says who? Listen to your body. Cross that line. Take better care of yourself.
Right. Right.
Or shift the energy so you don't need that extra sleep, or you don't
Right.
need organic food, or all these boxes that we're putting
You
ourselves
don't
into.
need to eat, period.
Right, right. Or you don't need to sleep, period.
Yeah. I mean, we
Or
have only,
whatever sleep you get is enough,
yeah.
which that's my favorite. It's like whatever you are allowing is perfect.
Hmm. Yeah. And so there's so many, and we discovered so many layers to this, right?
Oh, as always.
Yeah. Because it's like, where are we going to push? And like, as always, when we have these gatherings, especially in places like Mount Shasta, which is a great energy point, just where you just step into another dimension entirely anyway, we see the things that we hide from ourselves, right? It's so apparent, the things that we hide from ourselves. So then we're pushed, do this, even if the other things around it are saying no, but guidance is do this. And it's like, well, can you do this? Will you do this? And when you do it, do you believe you can do it without getting punishment for doing it? Right.
Right.
Or
Right.
have to suffer through,
Or pay a
because
price.
who are you? Like, and I heard what somebody said, who am I to be able to do this when so many cannot? Right? Worthiness.
Right. Right. And if it were easy, everyone would be doing it.
Right. That was another one. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, who am I to allow this to happen for me easily? Who am I to be able to do this without any repercussions? Right? Because we
Right.
believe, look at all the movies and movies and TV and everything that tell you, oh, well, anything that has to do with like magic, you have to pay a price for. There are so many things that say that, right? And what we
Right.
call magic, which is really our natural divine abilities that we've suppressed in separation, right? So, and coming back to that, the connection and remembrance of this is the illusion of that separation, and saying, okay, well, I can do this stuff and I can do it in ways that the mind can never even fathom how that comes together, except we just know how to do it. And then the ego says, oh, who are you? Who are you to do that?
Right.
And so then we create situations, we manifest them around us that lock us in, that block us in, that hold us down, that make us feel, in pain or limited, or have to shut down our financial, our financial
Right.
abilities, like anything. And or shut or to do this, we have to sacrifice this part of myself. Like, oh, okay, I can do this, but I have to sacrifice this part of myself that functions in the 3D world. And there's so much of that it's really even challenging to even look at it like in such in a very detailed way, because it's so detailed and individual for you and me, like in each one of us, on how we manifest that, to be able to finally observe it. Do we push ourselves until we finally are able to observe it without judgment, to resolve it, and to just move past it? And that's really sounds like such a simple summary, but honestly, we had
I know. And that my mind just immediately went out there.
Yeah, I
Right
know.
when I was like, I hope she didn't ask me to say anything because I don't think I can right
I
now.
know. I know. No. I had stopped and I'm like, can we just stop talking now? Because that was my reason for stopping. I was like,
Yeah. I mean, oh yeah.
and so we're ready to, we're pushing. So we've made things implode, and we've made things so uncomfortable in the limitations here in the 3D. And part of it is looking at, what am I doing that's saying I have to perpetuate that, right? These are the big observations. What am I doing that causes me to have to feel like I have to perpetuate that or support? Here's a big one. Here's a big hidden one. I have to support people who accept those limitations. And in doing so, I feed their limitations.
Right. Right. Or when you're looking at it from a practitioner client perspective, it's like they're asking me to make them feel better about accepting their limits
Right.
versus moving beyond their limits.
Right.
Which I find that very challenging.
It can be challenging because of how they can be angry at you, right? And so here's the thing. It goes back to, as the practitioner, so we're going to go into that whole perspective, even though we sort of backed right into that. But as a practitioner, if you're dedicated to helping somebody else step beyond their lines, right, and expand beyond where they believe is enough, and like sometimes they come to you and they say, I just want to be enough, right? I don't even feel like I'm there. And it's like, okay, you're there, you're getting there. So how about going beyond that? And so many people are like, oh no, I'm not ready to do that. All I'm happy is
Right.
fine, right? I'm happy here. I'm happy having a job that pays decent, that I can pay my bills and I can just do my stuff, right?
Right.
I can have a relationship that's sort of enough, um, because that's what culture says. I can have a home life that's sort of enough because that's what culture tells me, instead of what I know inside, which is I know there's more, right?
Right.
So then when you start pushing them beyond that, um, when you start pushing someone beyond that, because that's really what our jobs are, is being lighthouses of remembrance and consciousness, is to embody the energy of expansion and transcension, right? And transcension is going beyond those lines. So when
Right.
you start to push people to expand beyond that, sometimes they get angry.
Right.
And
And then it turns into the blame game
right,
versus taking responsibility for that.
right, because
Right.
then they
Which
want
I
to
think a
project
lot
it
of
on
people do
onto you.
that with or without the help of a practitioner.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, then they find something to project it onto, right?
Right.
So whether it's you or someone else, and I can't tell you how many people stop talking to me, all kinds of stuff, because what is my commitment is helping you to remember how powerful you are,
Right.
as it is my commitment to myself. That's what my guidance is to help others do. And sometimes that takes working through a lot of anger, because what's the voice inside our heads? Who am I? Who am I to go past that? And who are you to tell me I can go past that? I always laugh because um, I remember, oh my God, I just totally lost my train of thought because I just saw the comments that Nicole said. So Nicole says, woo,
Right.
recently began to experience this challenge head on, getting in the way of someone's expression. Yeah. So I forgot where I was going with this. It'll come back to me.
Well, you were saying about how many people have stopped talking to you because of.
Right. There was another point I had to make beyond that.
Oh. Well, sometimes it's just being the mirror to people,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's their choice to move on or not.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Thank you. Is I always laugh about one of the biggest experiences I've had with doing the work that I do with the Trinity, with bringing the Trinity practice in, is the opposite of people what might think, because my commitment is to working with people to help them remember that they are infinitely capable beyond what they think is enough, like into what their wildest dreams couldn't even have fathomed, right?
Right.
That the biggest resistance I have repeatedly encountered over the years has been my natural belief that we are all equally divine and we're all equally infinite, which is the opposite of what somebody would believe, because they would think that it's like, it would be from somebody like being trying to limit somebody, where I'm like, no, I look at everybody as infinitely capable. And when I say that, they sometimes they get angry, because they're like, who are you to tell me I can go beyond this line? How dare
Right.
you?
Right. And then who are you to go beyond the line?
Right, right. And maybe you're special, but I'm not, or I'm only this special, I'm only so good. And then when I continually tell them, no, we're all equally capable, then, and they want me, and they keep on like, and that's part of like, oh, well, tell me how to do this. And this is like a standard hierarchy thing that we've created. And that's, we
Right.
talked a lot about hierarchy stuff, right, last week as well.
We did.
um and how you might say and no and oh yes, of course we're all infinitely divine, but there's still in our heads a hierarchy.
Right. Well, and when you were talking about who are you to tell me I'm divine and limitless and all powerful. And by the way, who are you to behave that way?
Yeah.
Because we all agreed that we would stop right here at this line.
Yeah. And also, Cole put this right. Yeah, right. Who are you to tell me that I'm divine? I've been told all my life that I'm evil. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That I'm just a puny little human and that you're bad just by
Right.
being born. Right.
Right. Right.
Right. And so who are you to tell me that I'm not? Like, how dare you? Like, and even if it's not conscious, sometimes it builds up and builds up and builds up and says, oh, well, part of it has to do with we have this hierarchy of special, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, like, in the back of somebody's head, they think, well, I'm special or I'm not special, or they think I am special. Yeah, it is their own defense. Gloria says it's their own defenses and insecurities coming up. That's absolutely true. But that's how we've based this entire reality has been off of
Exactly.
insecurities and lack and
Well, and you
unworthiness.
think about, organized religion, original sin.
Right.
I mean, what baby is born sinful?
Right. I know.
I mean, I was watching bits and pieces of a Star Wars movie, and I guess the things that glared at me the most was how there's that hierarchy even within the good,
Yeah.
and the hierarchy even in the bad, the dark side, and it's like it's everywhere.
Yes.
It's everywhere, and the things that we choose to um, used to show who falls in that hierarchy are made up stuff like money.
Money or remembered abilities,
Right, right,
or whatever. Right.
right,
And so we misidentify having an individual purpose, right? Actually, and it's not an individual purpose. I believe that our purpose is all the same. It's the how we manifest and embody them that makes them different because it's individual to our journeys, right?
right, right,
So it doesn't mean that we have different purposes. It means that we just embody them and express them differently. And it's up to us to, because I believe that our main purpose is to come here to be remembrance, right? To be the
right,
vibration of wholeness and completeness and love and and just connectedness and transcendence. And how we manifest that is going to look different based on what we like to play with in the 3D and separation, and that's fine. But we keep on thinking we have separate, individual purposes, which then makes us start to create a hierarchy of, well, your purpose is more important than mine, or my purpose is more important than yours, or I'm very special or you're very special, like we have that whole like thing. And then we start taking away, like, it's like, not that nobody's special, it's that everybody's special, right?
right,
Exactly. It's many flavors of ice cream, which everybody knows is my favorite little saying is there's so many different flavors of ice cream. That's part of what we created, all these individual facets of ourselves, to be embodied in, not just even here. And the other thing that came up a huge, so here's the really important part of transcendence that came up while we're in retreat together as a group was, we get so myopic. We have gotten so myopic and we've forgotten that this consciousness here on earth is such a small piece of us, right?
right,
Not only that it's just a small piece of us, but that it is a very small piece of the bigger project, right? So
mm-hmm.
we think that all of these things and all of these issues are so important, and we focus on these little tiny details here on earth when we've forgotten that it is actually a part of a much bigger project. And so we've taken our eyes off of the bigger picture. And that's part of the practice of what we've done here. So therefore, if we are unwilling to even go beyond the lines of the little tiny details in the 3D, then that's why we keep on tripping ourselves up on the bigger project, because we're just losing our sight on the bigger picture
Right.
constantly. And we think the bigger picture is the earth, but it's not.
No.
getting into the practice of allowing the bigger picture to be incorporated, which is part of like how we talk about like this whole podcast that we do every week. It's all about the collective, right? And how it's manifesting in the individual, because it's all related and it manifests differently for each one of us because of our individual journeys, but collectively it is one theme, consistently.
Right.
And so that's what it's important to like. So when we start looking at the themes of the energies moving through and how they start connecting the dots, then we get into the practice of seeing the bigger picture. And the more we focus on the bigger picture, the more we're going to be required to transcend those little tiny pissant rules that we created to keep us in this little, like, tense separation and forgetting while we were still being a part of the bigger project. That's part of, I think, why what we got into whole discussions about, why we have so much now coming into us about star beings, other parts of our consciousness, other parts of the project that get confusing, because then everybody's like, well, do I put all my focus on this, or should I be afraid of this, or whatever? It's like, no, it's all a part of the bigger thing. So if we get into the practice of allowing ourselves to look at the bigger project and stop judging it, right? Because we judge it as what? Conspiracy theory, crazy sci-fi stuff, like you're nuts, right?
Right.
You like you've lost touch with reality. How about that one? Lost touch with reality.
Right.
It's like, no, I've let go.
The government hoax.
Right. It's a hoax. But it's like, instead of saying somebody's lost touch with reality, it's they've stopped limiting themselves with the reality that
with this reality
that we've created. And when we start talking about it that way, well, that feels so freeing to say, oh, well, I've gone past the line of saying I can only believe in what this is being, has been cooked up to be, right? We've gotten in such a habit of defining and putting a box in this little tiny piece of the reality that we then, it's like, oh my God, every time we take a little step beyond that and expand it a little more, there's so much controversy. Oh my God, how dare you, right?
Right.
Like, look at the people who've even like have explored quantum physics, right? Which pushes beyond the other sciences that we've created. And, then there's people, oh, well, that's like hogwash. And it's like, but it's not, it's all part of the bigger picture of how things are connected. Instead of trying to separate them into all these little boxes, it's starting to bring them back together and get bigger and bigger and bigger on how we could be consistently in contact with a part of ourselves that's incarnate on some other plane of existence here in the multiverse.
Right.
And how it all connects. And that, yes, there are projects that those of us who are incarnate here are here to embody and be a part of in completing the project, this part of the project, as this other part of the project is getting done, and it's like, we create that and the stuff that we do in our day-to-day lives here, and we don't realize the connection to the collective. But this is the whole thing, is it's the ability and willingness to say, this is just a tiny little piece of the bigger picture.
Yep. Nicole says, right, reality is subjective. When one observes rather than judges, the ego gets a new job description.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's just, a part of, like, it's not even that the ego gets a new job description. It does in a way, but what it does is, instead of saying this part of me is going to rule my reality, it's saying this is just a tiny piece of my whole. So I appreciate and love it and accept it as part of all the parts, but it's also not going to rule it anymore.
Right.
So thank you. And now it's time for me to also give deference and attention to the bigger whole as well. And that's where we're coming to a lot of friction within ourselves. Right. How dare you do that, right?
Right.
And so it is important for us to see those reflections and look at the bigger pictures and connect those dots.
Right. And I think by starting by looking at, where do we draw the lines for ourselves? Where do I limit myself? Where do I say, okay, this amount is enough? versus this amount or this amount or this amount.
Right.
And practice taking that one step further. Like that one little bit of extra breath, that one little bit of extra sleep, that one little bit of extra stretching, that one little extra bit of risk taking, just that one more bite.
Yeah. Yeah. And that gets really big pretty quickly.
It does.
And so, we had it manifest in many ways. Take that one extra step over something you're afraid of, right?
Right.
Beyond something you're afraid of. Take one extra step beyond where you believe you have physical ability to, um, what's the
Achieve.
word? What was that?
Achieve.
Achieve or tolerate even,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, when we've gone on some pretty tenuous hikes on those retreats, right? Whether it's with the group or then a smaller group, whatever. And it's always like, what do we say? Well, if you feel like it gets too difficult, take 10 more steps and then stop and take a break.
Right. And then take 10 more.
And know you can take 10 more.
Right.
And when we stop taking the judgment of how it's done, of how it looks, of how it's experienced or whatever, sometimes we have to push ourselves past what we believe are our limits so that we know next time that we can go beyond that and that it might be uncomfortable. And so we manifest that in the physical, right, in terms of a tough hike or something like that. But to know, okay, I can do this because the next time when my ego does try to kick in and say, oh, no, 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 we have to stay in this box or behind this line, you're like, yeah, but we did that last time and it was all right.
Right.
Wasn't really
Yeah.
any, wasn't really any worse. It wasn't, but in fact, then I had the gratification of knowing I had gone there and look at something new, experience something new because I went beyond my line.
Right.
And look
And you
at
can do
that.
the same thing with worthiness.
Yes.
Like, let me take just that little bit more, that little step further to show my worthiness, to prove to myself my worthiness, or allow my worthiness.
Allow my worthiness, really. We had that come up too. Oh God, I'm yawning a lot today. But yeah, we had that come up a lot too especially like with, okay, I'm guided to do this and it costs this much. Well, that's beyond where I'm typically like comfortable, whatever. Because money is one of the big things that we decide defines our worthiness, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And so there's a lot of a lot of that stuff came up and it was like, okay, so if I allow myself to and then once you push yourself past it, you're like, oh, and then what tends to happen is, okay, well, that all comes back to you in spades. That's what we call, it all comes back to you in spades. Like you'll get a whole bunch of money to support it. You'll get whatever. And that's what I tell people all the time is sometimes you need to take that leap before you even see the ground.
Right.
Because and the more you do that and realize the universe does and your higher self does support you in that, and that whole exercise is the exercise of allowing your remembrance, because the more we push ourselves past our lines, the more we allow ourselves to remember and look at things from a different perspective, because we didn't have that perspective inside those lines before. So yeah, so I think today, all we're going to really focus on is all there is for us to focus on is maybe being observant of your own lines.
Right.
And to set yourself in a place of worthiness to know you're allowed to transcend and just go beyond those lines, and to give yourself the drive and motivation in an easy and flowing way, pleasant and fun way,
right,
step beyond those lines, to take one step beyond whatever lines there are in your life that you believe you can't cross, or that and that you can do so free of punishment, that you can do it easily, you could do it with enjoyment and fun and love and prosperity, and that there's nothing to it. It's only ourselves that hold us back. To have that realization and to allow yourself and to say, I'm going to put this in front of me where my line is this week so that I can cross it and have fun with it. What would it look like if I had fun doing that all the time? then we'd have motivation to do it a lot, right?
Right.
So once we start setting that in place, that creation in place, then it just becomes a whole lot easier to push yourself next time. It's all
Abs-
that.
all that.
All that. All right, you ready?
I am. I think I'm already out there.
I know. Me too. Wow. I'm dizzy from that.
Yeah, yeah, I would say.
I could have stayed out there all morning. It's like, oh, this
Yeah.
is a good stopping point for the moment.
The possibilities just, first I saw myself as like dancing, and I kept hitting my limit. And it was like I would expand it, and then I would, get a little freer with my dancing, and I would hit it again. And then I saw myself like, the gymnastics floor routines, how they're done on the mat, and they have to go to the corners to get a good score and all that. And it was like, yeah, that's expansive and that's big, but there's still that limit. And it was like, okay, how about if it's just an innate part of me, if it's just automatically wherever I move and wherever I go is limitless. And boy, did I just go out there after
Yeah.
that.
Oh
It
yeah.
was
No.
like it was like all possibilities were there.
Oh, I saw it similarly too. But it was like, so there was this, and then there was this, and it was like, okay, well, then this is this, and then okay, so then it was like the line expanded out, right? And it was like, okay, well, now what about this, this, and this? And it's like, okay, well, there's this, and then the line expand, and it just kept on doing that, right? And then I got to the planet, and it was like, oh, well, there's this and this and this, and well, that's you too, and that's you too, and okay, now that just expanded out beyond that, and then it was like, okay, and then it was like, oh my god, it was so dizzying because it got so big. And I was,
Right?
oh yeah, yep, yep, I remember this now, and it was so nice, very
Oh,
nice.
it was. It wasn't the least bit uncomfortable.
No,
What was
not at all.
uncomfortable was the smallness in the beginning.
Yeah. Oh.
Right.
so so that was fabulous. So everybody, that's your home play for this week. So look at, to commit, come back to this session and
Right.
do it again and again, and let yourself expand and see where you can help let yourself expand beyond your
Right.
lines.
See
That's
where you go.
yeah, and have fun with it in a way that's fun. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and enjoyable. All right. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next week. And I'm sure like this is just going to start the ball rolling. There's so many other things
Right.
to talk about that we're experiencing right now. So we'll see you next week. Same bat channel, same bat time, same bat time, same bat channel. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a great one.